Turn to our scripture lesson. You'll see it on the screen here. It's from First Corinthians chapter 12. It reads, "There are indeed many different members, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, 'I do not need you,' any more than the head can say to the feet, 'I don't need you.' And even those members of the body which seem less important are in fact indispensable. We honor the members we consider less honorable by clothing them with greater care, thus bestowing on the less presentable a propriety which the more presentable do not need. God has so constructed the body as to give great honor to the lowly members, that there may be no dissension in the body, but that all the members may be concerned for one another. If one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all members share its joy." Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Thanks be to God. This morning, as we continue our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, I wanted to focus on two concepts from Latin American liberation theology, the concepts of encounter and accompaniment, and was reminded of this familiar scripture for many. St. Paul uses the metaphor of the human body to describe the interactions and interrelatedness of our human lives and indeed of our communities and of the church, right? Like we are all parts of the body and we need to work together in order to live and to survive and to thrive. So when I think about encounter and accompaniment, I think about the importance of relationships in our lives, relationships of trust and mutuality, relationships where we encounter one another in our uniqueness, in our personal identities, encountering each other in ways in which our hearts speak to one another and we find our lives mutually transformed. And this idea of accompaniment, which really means like a walking together or a journeying together. Um, Another word that we might use to describe these two practices is solidarity, as we join in deep community and relationship. And in this moment of um, deep uncertainty, of deep polarization, of deep isolation, of deep division, it seems like now more than ever, we need to lean in and engage in these deep practices. So, because it is my birthday, I thought I'd give myself a little bit of a break and invite some friends and members of our leaders and our legacy partners and friends of Central to share about their reflections on these two concepts. So, first up is Izzy. Izzy is traveling this weekend, but he and I were able, through the marvels of technology, to record an interview and share it with you. So, Deacon Ann, if you could please play that video. So I'm joined by Izzy. I'm going to ask Izzy, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Izzy Hirinarutia. My pronouns are he, him. I am an Argentine American activist um, and organizer here in Detroit, Michigan. And I do a lot of work, particularly with Swords and Plowshares Peace Center and Gallery, as well as various community organizations in the Metro Detroit and Detroit area.
Thanks, Izzy. I mean, how does your identity kind of inform your work in activism, both in Southwest and at Swords and Plowshares?
Right. So I'm Argentinian. My father
Mhm.
came to America in the 1980s um, to become a doctor and to escape La Guerra Sucia, which was the fascist military dictatorship in power at the time. I heard a lot of stories about the dictatorship growing up. And a lot of his experiences sort of stem from this like atmosphere of fear and suppression that I think, many people are not unfamiliar to in the United States, especially right now. Um, And, I come back to this all the time in regards to my community work. I currently work with the People's Assembly in Southwest Detroit. We're a collection of people who, from various walks of life, community leaders, church leaders, neighbors, teachers, students, youth, nonprofit organizers, who are coming together to try to find ways to support members of our community and families in our community who are affected by ICE and some of the anti-immigration policies that are being that are targeting areas like Southwest from this administration right now. And I think about this all the time, with regards to my family's experiences with military fascism. And sort of like the parallels that we see a lot happening in the United States right now. The idea that there are certain people who are seen automatically as dissident in regards to their background, where they come from, and who really just want to live their lives in peace as much as possible. And my own experiences being an Argentinian are sort of mixed and complex. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. But unlike a lot of other people who grew up Latino, I'm also a white Latino, which is something that I try really hard to recognize in my work, particularly because I'm working with a lot of people who are indigenous or mestizo. So that is, there's a certain aspect of that where I have to be very conscious that my family is descended from Spanish colonizers in Latin America, as opposed to a lot of the other people in my community. And I find that, in regards to engaging with my work, I try really hard to prioritize the voices of the people who are affected most by some of these policies or these issues that are really salient to Southwest neighborhoods, neighborhoods in on the east side or in sort of central Detroit area, as much as possible, and let them lead me and guide me in terms of the kinds of things that we should be focusing on with our community work.
Yeah, that's part of your, well, thank you for the thoughtful response and sharing a little bit about your family's background and how it guides and informs how you live your life in this current moment, both within our nation and in your community in Southwest Detroit. The end of your response there about sort of what would come out of like the Latin American theological tradition of like preferential option for the poor,
Mhm.
the most impacted or vulnerable, I think really connects with our two themes for today, which are encounter and accompaniment, really about the importance of mutuality and person-to-person interaction and how that can be transformative. So how do you understand those concepts?
Yeah, a lot of the aspect of working in with communities with leftist politics is this concept of solidarity, which sort of I think echoes a lot of this encounter element. Um, the idea of wherever we always are working in solidarity with people who we have the we have similar interests and goals, experiences, and even if we don't, we can still try to approach them and advocate for them anyway. Uh, and when I think of the terms encounter, I think of sort of the understanding that the people that we work with, may come from a variety of different walks of life, a variety of different backgrounds, and may feel a lot of different things. And it's not always going to be perfect necessarily. I think that that's something that, particularly with leftists, we sometimes struggle with the idea of like, well, we have to do this and it's going to turn into this and then it'll all be wonderful. It's so frequently not like that. A lot of the times there are so many mistakes that are made and we can fail over and over again to do the things that we want to do. But it's really important to me that in regards to our relationships, our people, that we really meet people where they're at, that we understand where they're coming from and how to engage with them as much as possible, because a lot of the times we learn more from them than they learn from us. And also being part of being a leftist is working with the people around you. So we are all us. It's not us or them. It's, you know, for us, for all of us, for our communities, for our neighborhoods, for our schools. And particularly the idea of accompaniment, I think, has been really salient in this current political moment as much as possible, particularly amongst the Latin American community. This idea of there are certain people who may or may not have privileged documentation status that are able to fight back against oppression in ways that other people cannot, or certain people that have resources that other people do not, that are willing to share those resources with people who need them as much as possible, and really put themselves in maybe positions that are more scrutinized, more at the forefront, more public, more visible, in order to really try to make sure that people who are not able to do that are able to join the fight and then also live in peace and also protect themselves to a certain degree. And we really are all just like walking alongside each other in a way that really emphasizes, not focuses on our differences, but tries to understand sort of how we can use them to better support each other as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. So I wonder, like, could you share like a story or a concrete example of how that has played out for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so, like I've said before, this is not my story, but I feel comfortable sharing it because it was a campaign that was pretty important to the People's Assembly in Southwest Detroit, um, also known as Asamblea Popular. There was a student at Western International High School named Michael, who was on his way to a field trip, and he was traveling separately. And then he was stopped in a routine traffic stop, and he was detained by ICE. When this happened, his teacher, Christian, in particular, started a campaign to try to advocate for his release, for us to get more information about where he was being detained, and really brought together a lot of the people involved with the People's Assembly, so community leaders and neighbors and other teachers who had, you know, were feeling very impassioned about this because he was a few months away from graduation. He was already 18, and he was still already planning to go back to Colombia after graduation, but he just wanted his diploma. So it was a really heartbreaking and terrifying time, I think, for a lot of DPSCD teachers and students and families to understand that this is something that can happen just so fast and without any indication. And Kristen in particular, like, really rallied together a bunch of teachers from the Detroit Federation of Teachers, from the DPSCD school system, parents, family members, community members, to come out during a DPSCD school board meeting and flood public comment, demanding that the school board make a public statement about Michael, and then also use their contacts with Democratic representatives like Shree Thanadar and Rashida Tlaib to try to advocate for his release or get more information about where he was being detained and what they could do to try to help him. And we ended up almost doing, like, it was almost like 100 people that showed up to this. And, you know, people that we had worked with before, people that we hadn't. Michael's mother showed up and talked about her story, you know, as much as possible, and how heartbreaking it was to have a son go through this and to watch her son go through this. We had Kristen talk about, like, how heartbreaking it was because she was his teacher particularly, and she had a formal teacher relationship with him and knew how bright of a kid he was and how many opportunities that he had, and how devastating this was for not just him and his family, but like for teachers at DPSCD who have students who may or may not have privileged documentation status, and who are concerned for their safety. And at the end of the day, we were able to pressure the school board to make a statement, actually right there in that meeting. They stopped the whole meeting and they were like, we're going to make a public statement right now because we've heard so many people talk about this. And they were in contact with Democratic representatives in the state of Michigan, Unfortunately, we were unable to stop his deportation. But right now, his teacher is in contact with him and his family to try to get him resources so that he can finish his diploma online
Mm.
um, while he is in Colombia. So,
Thanks for sharing that story. It's a powerful and moving story, right? It tells of the impact that kind of the current administration's immigration policy cruelty, right, has on families and community, but also the strength and power of family and community coming together. And I think, like that mix of what seems like success and failure, right, wins and losses. So in the midst of this like really difficult moment for our communities and for our nation, like what gives you hope, Izzy?
what gives me hope?
Yeah.
Oh, so many things. I know that sounds really kind of interesting to say right now, but there are so many things that give me hope. There's things that always give me hope. One of the things that I really truly believe is that humans are fundamentally good, and we want good things for each other, and we want to give good things to each other. Like we really want that for each other, and we're going to do it no matter what. It just might take some time. It might take some shifting around. It might take some energy, but we're gonna get there as much as possible. And I think that that is the driving force behind um, everything that I do. My own experiences as a Latin American person living in the United States, the experiences of other people that I see in my community who are really advocating for themselves and their families. Um, I I just that we know that we are all such wonderful humans with a moral duty to really like do good and do right by each other as much as possible. Um, and in especially in the absence of like maybe support from legislative or governmental bodies right now, which I think is something that is frustrating a lot of people, particularly because this current presidential administration has scared so many so many politicians, so many government officials. It can really feel like a lot of like because we are to some degree being left behind, unfortunately. But I think that ultimately, like in those moments where we don't have anybody in these positions of power to turn to advocate for us, what really brings me hope and gives me guidance is the understanding that we are all going to come together as communities and as friends, as loved ones, as neighbors, as coworkers, as church members, right?
Mhm.
To really try to create a better world for each other. And because we can't do it all individually on our own, we have to really like support and come together in a way that really facilitates like collective power and collective support as much as possible. And we're always going to do that. And that's what really gives me so much hope in particular.
Thanks, Izzy. That's a beautiful response. Thanks for kind of holding that that commitment and conviction about like the intrinsic goodness of human beings and and our power together, our power as community. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thankful for Izzy and his words and sharing his heart with us. I'm going to invite Sylvia and Yaya to come off mute. Anne, if you could spotlight all three of us, we're going to kind of continue the conversation. So first, I'm going to have Yaya and Sylvia introduce themselves, share a little bit about their identity and work. Um, so Sylvia, why don't you start us off?
Oh, hi, Reverend Paul. Thanks for having us here this morning and for offering this opportunity to talk a little bit more about the work that we do and how we connect it to our faith, right? So my name is Sylvia Orduño. I'm a member of Central and proud member. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. Mexican American heritage. My grandparents were from Chihuahua and Sonora, and so border people, right? Uh, but yeah, one of the things that I mentioned before is that I'm third and fourth generation, depending on which side of the family we're looking at. And so, but I wasn't raised to speak Spanish, and it's been a lifelong frustration, right? Even when I ask my folks about it, they're like, "Well, we wanted you to learn your English well." And it's like, "Well, I think I could have done both, right?" And it becomes um, a a problem, right? Not only just in how it is that we should try to be able to communicate with as many people as possible, but it also causes tension and sometimes frictions, right? When you're trying to organize alongside other Latinos and you don't have the what's considered sort of the fundamental commonality, right, of being able to speak the language. But nonetheless, I still very much, try to use my heritage and as part of like my base for organizing and how I think about things and what the experiences of people are in the community. But I also very much have been able to um, realize that struggle also helps me connect across other sorts of ethnic cultures and generations, right? And so it's been important in that way for me to at least connect with other people in other ways.
Thanks, Sylvia. As a third generation Mexican American myself, my family also did not teach me Spanish, so I understand sort of that struggle and that pain. I know for me, it really came out of some of the trauma of the mass deportations of the 30s. So I try to hold that gently for all of us, right? All of us Latinos, Latinx folk who don't speak Spanish. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
What would you
hello.
share? Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Yair Bina. My pronouns are they, them, their. I'm a queer Chicano American, very proud of my Mexican heritage. I'm from Los Angeles originally. We found that out in our earlier conversation that me and Sylvia grew up around similar areas. I'm very grateful to be here today to talk about, identity. I think it's something, I'll be honest, I miss talking about a little bit from moving in Michigan. I think that the community has shifted, and I really appreciate you guys discussing your identities and relationship to, our community, because having this multi-ethnic identity in the United States, you're birthed with that. You come into the consciousness of the world truly with that multiplicity of identities. And I think for me, that's one of the foremost ways that I see my identity play out in my work and my goals in my work is that true moment when encountering someone, knowing I know how much I bring with my different identities. I can only imagine what somebody brings. Let me listen. So I'm excited to get into conversation today.
Great. Well, I think that last point of your introduction, yeah, really speaks to what we're talking about today, encounter and accompaniment. So I wonder if you might unpack both those concepts and what they look like in your work at Now at
Yes,
Central. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. It was beautiful to hear from Izzy, an Argentinian person and activist. It made me think of Maria Lagones, who is a Argentinian philosopher who I think I've had this discussion maybe with you, Paul, a couple years ago, but I'll share with the group is she explores a concept called world traveling. And in this concept of world traveling, you don't need to leave the rootedness of your feet. It is a really a metaphysical state of mind of allowing somebody to guide you there through their world instead of allowing, terms, metrics, measures, numbers guide humanity. And I think that that's something that really came up. I think, and as Izzy segued, as you set us up, Paul, and in the scripture, is really the importance of reinforcing like our humanness, because I see that as the consistent among all this violence, oppression, and everybody is feeling it, especially when I'm in a body of the legacy of colonialism is rooted in my DNA and absolutely affecting still to this day, although I am not experiencing what my peoples did, the generational trauma and just response, who we've become now, has continued to evolve. But I see that that humanness as like that consistent and the ability to encounter as fundamental to like resistance, because as even we started this discussion with us, our identities may intersect, has its own nuance, but also can discuss, yeah, assimilation in the United States is in a complex dynamic and can come up with so much self-loathing, for me, guilt, feeling like I don't belong. We belong as humans to this earth, in my opinion. And that is the goal of oppression, is to divide. And I want to always push back against that in my work. Is, yes, I do see that as a struggle. Having English speaking language would be a privilege, right? Maybe having me being phenotypically light does provide me ability to move differently in the world, and I'm never negligent of that. And also, I believe we're at a point in our realities of the world in this current thing. I think it's all highlighting that, like, we can celebrate our differences even within our own communities, while also acknowledging that, like, these are like concepts imposed on us that I don't need to identify. I do feel that I don't may not be able to connect with that community as much with language like we're talking about, right? But that is a colonizer's language, and what is the psychology also, like, of that when it comes to that. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Lots of depth, lots of nuance there. Um, what struck me is sort of um, personally is that kind of that struggle with belonging, right? In my life, I've often found myself like too Anglo for Mexican communities, but like too Mexican for Anglo communities. So how do we get, how do we find belonging, right? That's authentic and true for us and build community around that. Sylvia, what would you add to the conversation? What have encounter and accompaniment solidarity look like for you?
Thanks. I really appreciate what you had to say there. Yeah, yeah. Definitely felt much of that stuff over the years too. I think one of the things that has been like a tremendous sort of life change, especially in moving to Michigan and Detroit in particular, is really the work that I've learned to do alongside African American folks, right? Amazing generations of leaders and activists here who have really taught me a lot about how it is that they organize, how it is that they think through many of these issues, how it is that we connect what has been going on over generations of slavery, but also much of the work through the civil rights movement and extensions of that even into today. And so that's been really something that I carry with me consciously when I'm doing work in with alongside Michigan Welfare or with Michigan Welfare Rights or with the Poor People's Campaign or with the People's Water Board Coalition in particular. And it's been something that, I've had to sort of step into, but also step back from as I try to understand like my place and space within the organizing of communities that are largely Black majority, but then also trying to recognize how we constantly have to make sure that we're talking across different peoples and cultural experiences. Central to me, I want to also just name, especially since we're here, has been another important community for me to be able to better understand how it is that folks are playing out both their faith convictions with, their beliefs about what it means to be a Methodist, right? And how it is that we engage with the community around us, both in our physical space where the church is located, but also how it is that we're prioritizing issues that are important for equity and justice and people's liberation and quality of life. And so that connection has really been something that I've been trying to like learn more from and grow from, and has been something I've really appreciated, especially here in these past few years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, for both of you, is there like a concrete example or sort of a moment of encounter or a time when you've kind of walked side by side with folks or a community that's really been life-giving and like life transforming for you?
I can
Yeah.
just say that folks know that I'm, deeply engaged in this fight for statewide water affordability. And that's been something that's been a, a really huge learning experience, but it's been really emotionally straining at the same time, right?
Mhm.
So we first got involved in this work um, as Michigan Welfare Rights leaders, in particular Marion and Maureen, right? Really recognized that we had to do something at a systemic level to change the ways in which poor people were being treated, denied water and sanitation, right? Just basic human needs, but also things that are also related to how it is that we can maintain a safe household, and the impact on children and elders and people with disabilities when anyone is denied that, right? And so it very much came from, in part, some of the beliefs that folks have been teaching me over the years about Marxist principles and liberation theology and how it is that we ensure that justice is extended and inequity and fairness out to the rights of poor people. And it's not something that's popular to talk about or even easy to have, because it's very much a space where people will try to blame and shame and humiliate you when you talk about the rights of the poor. But it's very much the space in which I believe we have to begin these organizing conversations, right? Recognizing where people are, the experiences that they're having, the insecurities that they have, and trying to figure out, well, then how do we change power systems? How do we change the economic situation of people when we're fighting very real social and political oppositions on these issues? And so, as we've tried to move this fight from local, water providers or energy companies to local government, to state government, national government, we see how these play out along the way. And we're constantly, while we're trying to be on the offense, we're constantly on the defense, right? From powerful people who believe that they know better and have the answers for us, or just want to shut us down in many ways and not even engage. And so this whole legislative experience continues to be a difficult place to work, but we realize that it's necessary if we want to try to do anything to change political power.
Mhm. Sylvia, thanks for sharing that. I know it's been a long and at times painful journey, right? In organizing for water affordability. So thank you for your work.
Thanks.
Thank you for your tenacity,
Absolutely.
for sharing your heart with us here. Yeah, yeah. What would you share?
Oh yeah, no, just very much uplifting and resonating, Sylvia, specifically about the part about legislation. It's the dirtiest battle because it can sometimes feel also like mind splitting when they're like, you're not grasping this is a human right, like water? Like, what do you mean? No, but in a moment that kind of was standing out to me was that in 2018, so I mean, transitioning to Oregon and being conscious that when you're entering a new space, like after I moved from California to Oregon, it was a culture shock for me. I growing up primarily, like my whole community in California is all Mexican American people. While it is a very diverse area, so I encountered a lot of other communities, and I'm very grateful for that. One community I did not grow up around a lot was the Caucasian white community. So my school was a primarily white institution in the whitest city in a major metropolitan city in America. And it was a meaningful time of encounter in all of that. And I think really created another kind of pathway towards um, having that rootedness in my identity, but recognizing that there's also people that aren't aware of me, and how do I begin that dialogue, you know? But so that kind of provides a little bit of backstory to the situation. But anyway, we were in 2018, there is a ICE detention facility in Tacoma, Washington, hidden, deeply embedded in industry, which many of them are very much always encourage people to take a look at where your facilities and detention centers are and how long many of them have been there, because this issue predates this administration. They may not have been recorded and so outwardly, but in like my areas growing up, have known people to be snatched out of homes and stuff, you know. So just kind of wanting to highlight like experiential things that like there may not be, there's always levels that each administration is going to take and escalate. And I think I've really also heard that theme in this conversation. Paul has mentioned like earlier acts of deportation in the 30s. Sylvia, you spoke to your family's timing and coming here. And all that really speaks to that, like, again, we're the rootedness, kind of the person and the spirit. But in that opportunity to protest at that detention facility highlighted a few things for me. One, just the continuous power of people organizing. And there was so many people from all walks of life. Like I was in a random vehicle that a school was like, hey, we're all like some people in my school, like we're all going, whoever wants to come, like come. This is how many people, like we'll shove as many people as we can, like in the car. And I did not know majority of those people from that day. And the people that I encountered, the dialogue that we had, the ways in which there was multiple expressions of advocacy, like through music, art, dance, letters being read, And all of that just really highlighted the importance to me of different voices within struggles and different types of expression being seen as valid and heard, and just reinforced the beauty of us like organizing and coming together. And the fight continues on. As we know, I think that there is a slow process. At that time, some people were able to connect back to, many people in that facility were at that point where they were asking to simply go back to their place of origin with regards to their travel, simply because they have no exit points, as we are aware of. So that is like a moment that stands out and has continued to come back to me in this particular kind of climate.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. It sounds like it was a really powerful experience to be there and to be part of that protest and um, in that moment of encounter. So thank you for sharing that. As we kind of come to a close here, I want maybe just briefly from each of you, what's a word of hope or a phrase of hope that you would offer into this moment? Yeah,
Yes,
what's your hope?
celebration as resistance. Continue to live life. When you see the sun shining and hitting that glass and illuminating the room, take that moment to breathe it in.
Yeah. Fiesta. Yes, Sylvia.
Well, I guess we all start with just being blessed to wake up each day, right? Because every day is not guaranteed to us. But I think again, I'm mostly feeling hopeful when I see that other people are willing to talk about the struggles that are going on around them. And oftentimes, we're not encouraged to talk about our problems, right? Just sort of like tough it out. But hearing more and more people being willing to at least share their stories and be forthcoming about, what it is that they need. It was like yesterday when I was at the No Kings Day protest. I was there with Maureen and some others in Ferndale. And, just to see so many folks in the suburbs in particular that are coming out around this, to me, that's where I see the hope.
Yeah.
Right in the city, we're always frustrated and angry. But when I see it happening in the suburbs, then I'm like, all right, we might actually have a real chance here for some change. Thanks.
Well, thank you both for sharing your stories and sharing your hearts and for offering this as kind of a moment of encounter here. So thank you very much. Centralites, give them some central love.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm gonna have Anne play our closing music, and then I'll wrap up with some instructions and benediction. Thank you, Yaya. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.